the same recipe for mayonnaise for, I don't know, 40 years. And mine's a little bit different, okay? But we're gonna use the one that you've got on your paper simply because that's the one that you've got to reference, okay? My recipe for hollandaise is a little bit different also, right? But the one that you're gonna use is the one that's on your sauce paper that I gave you, okay? Which I think is 3 eggs and a cup of clarified butter, right? I make mine just a little bit differently. Escoffier's recipe for hollandaise actually starts with a reduction of white wine vinegar and crushed white peppercorns, and then you make it in a saute pan actually, as opposed to a bowl. But that's not very user friendly. So the first time you try to make it, you're probably gonna break it or you're just not gonna be successful. So we use the one that's on the sheet. That makes it a little bit more successful for everybody, okay? Now, a couple of things before we start. We need lemon juice, right? So we're gonna take a lemon. It comes in these little tiny packages that are yellow, right? And we have to cut them in half and then squeeze them to get the juice out, okay? It doesn't come in a bottle, right? So we're gonna take our lemon, we're gonna cut it in half, okay? And we're gonna use a strainer, okay? And you're gonna find that you have the best juicer ever created you carry around with you all the time, which is your fingers, right? So you take your fingers, you push them up in there, and you squeeze that lemon and turn it, okay? That gets all the juice out of that lemon, okay? And then you don't need that. Okay. This one, it's probably yours. Just go ahead and juice this one too. The idea is that, I've watched people do this, so they take a lemon, and they need a tablespoon of lemon juice, so they're trying to do this, right? Which doesn't work very well, right? And you don't get the seeds out of it, you don't get the pulp out of it. You want to get that, okay? So you want to strain it, okay? Set you over here, do my trash work for a while, okay? Eggs. We need egg yolks. Oops, there's more white vinegar. I just made a mess. Can I have a wipe away, please?
There are none over here. There's not on the card.
There's some where? In the box.
You do need 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. Not white wine vinegar, not red wine vinegar, but white vinegar. There's 1. There's 2. And we're gently move that this time. Because not quite so not gently. Thank you. Yes. Apparently I'm going to be really good at that today. Eggs, right? We need 2 egg yolks. 1 egg yolk can emulsify up to 8 ounces of oil, which is exactly what we're going to use. Okay, we're going to use 1 cup of oil for 2 egg yolks. Okay, now crack them. I always wear a glove because your egg yolks or your eggs are going to go into something and they're not going to get cooked, right? So, and I can do it like this. I can go back and forth. I can strain my yolk that way, or I can just put it in a gloved hand, right? Kind of work it back and forth, get all the white off of it. That goes in my bowl, okay? Pardon?
If you got too much of the white into our mayonnaise, but not emulsify.
It'll still emulsify, but it's going to change the texture. Because the whites are going to, the protein that's in the whites is actually going to denature, and it's going to cause it to be frothy as opposed to saucy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And there are some people out there that make hollandaise with whole eggs. I just never have cared for it. To me, it's not really hollandaise. And there's people who've made hollandaise with egg yolks in a food processor where it never gets cooked. Not a hollandaise. I mean, it's a cold sauce. It's not really a hollandaise. So we're going to get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. Okay. Now we can do 2 approaches for our mustard. I prefer smooth Dijon mustard for my mayonnaise. To me, it's just a little less heat intensive at the end, right? Because this is dry mustard. Okay. Now I don't know if anybody's ever eaten dry mustard or not. Anybody ever have Chinese mustard packets in Chinese restaurants? That's literally dry mustard and water mixed together. That's it. Okay. If you use hot water, it's not nearly as pungent in your nose, right? So it doesn't get that heat. Those phenolic compounds kind of get destroyed a little bit. Cold water makes it super hot, right? Like wasabi. Okay. So if you have a little bit of cold water that goes into your mayonnaise to thin it, that heat's going to come out. Okay. There's a little water in the vinegar because the vinegar is only like 5% acidity. So there's water in there to dilute it down from whatever it was to get to 5% acidity. That cold water or room temperature water will cause this to get hot, okay, in your nose. Okay. I prefer Dijon mustard. I think it's more user friendly. Okay. Now, I believe your recipe says 1 teaspoon, is that correct, of Dijon mustard for mayonnaise?
2 teaspoons of dry mustard.
Yeah, we're going to use 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. Okay. Now, one little trick. Okay. We need 2 cups of oil. Okay. So we're going to need a pint of oil. This is 2 cups. And I could just go ahead and use it right straight out of this measuring cup, but there's only a certain number of these, and you don't need anybody hogging them. So we're going to put our oil into the Lexan. And we're going to take our teaspoon. All right, I've got a little bit left in there. And we're going to oil our teaspoon, because that allows the mustard to come out and it doesn't stick in there, so you get the whole teaspoon. Okay, one of those little tricky things. Okay, now one other thing, I've taken a couple of wipe-aways. All right, I'll open this up so you can see what this looks like. All right, gotten them damp. Okay, grab the corners, make a mask out of it, right? Put it here, there, another one on this side. This is going to help stabilize my bowl, okay? So I don't have to have somebody stand here holding it the whole time, okay? When it gets really, really thick, it might have to have somebody hold it, but sometimes, most of the times I don't, okay? Now, what we're going to do is take these egg yolks, our Dijon mustard, right? And we are going to whisk this together. Now, I also add about half of my 2 tablespoons of vinegar, right? Don't put it all in there, because you're going to find that when we get to the point of our mayonnaise being pretty much done, if it starts getting too thick, we'll add a little, the rest of our vinegar to thin it, gives it flavor also. And now, you're going to want to whisk like this, right? Okay, I'm just holding my whisk here, right between my thumb and my forefinger. These fingers just kind of sit there, right? But my wrist is what's doing the whisking, not my arm. Okay, you're going to want to use this action, and then you're going to move back and forth, right? So that you're kind of keeping that whole mass of product moving pretty much all at the same time, right? Now, again, like I said last week when I'm whisking, right? I can whisk like this. It uses this muscle, right? If that muscle begins to get tired, okay, I can flip my arm over and I can do this, right? And it uses this muscle, okay? So I can keep my arm from getting too tired, okay? But I want to go back and forth. And you can see what's happening now is this is getting air incorporated into it, okay? If I try adding my oil before I start getting those molecules broken and separated by air, my mayonnaise isn't going to work, okay? So I need to make sure that this is nice and foamy, okay, before I start adding any oil to it. Now, Joe mentioned aioli earlier, right? And I usually make my aioli with a 50% mix of olive oil and 50% mix of salad oil. Because to me, our commercial olive oils that we usually have available in the United States get bitter when you use them 100% for AOE, right? And I just don't care for that. It sticks in the back of my tongue. I don't like it, right? So I always cut my olive oil 50% with salad oil to make my AOEs. But generally, this is the same procedure for doing that, okay? So if I want to make a garlic aioli, I would make this with 50% oil, 50% salad oil, and then I would add my roasted garlic or my fresh garlic to that, okay? And that would make my garlic aioli. A basil aioli would be done the same way. I would take my Chiffonade basil and add that to my aioli base whenever I get it complete, okay? So, now, you can see this is actually changing color. It's beginning to get a lighter lemony color to it, okay? So, we want to get that nice and airy, yeah.
Can you use some of this for here?
Sure. Just because you're special though.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah. If it was anybody else, I'd tell them hell no. Just kidding. Okay. So, those of you who are making in pastry, you're going to find also that you do this with egg yolks and other products before you make things sometimes, right? Because you got to get that egg yolk broken up. Now, egg yolks have lecithin in it. Lecithin is a binding agent. You're going to find it if you read ingredient labels. You're going to find lecithin listed in ingredients a lot, right? Because it binds products together. Okay, it helps that emulsion happen. The components of mustard also have a binder in them also, right? That's why we use the dry mustard or the Dijon mustard. Okay. Now, some chefs also put just a pinch of cayenne pepper in here when they make their mayonnaise. I usually do it when I'm finished, right? That's part of my seasoning process. I salt my white pepper, maybe a little bit of cayenne pepper if I want that in there, but I usually don't use it in my base because I may not want that cayenne in everything I make. You know, I may make, potato salad or Waldorf salad or something like that with this mayonnaise, and if I'm going to have cayenne pepper in it, I may not want that. So, okay. So, now you can see this is actually starting to get thicker, right? You can see I'm getting some trails, right? As this whisk goes through there, it's leaving little trails, okay? Now, I want to take my mayonnaise or my oil, and I want to just drizzle right over the whisk, right? Some of the oil, and that's just a little tiny bit, okay? Again, just gonna do this again, just a little tiny bit. Don't press down really hard on your whisk, otherwise your mayonnaise is going to kind of turn green because the sulfur compounds in the yolks, actually the iron compounds in the yolks, will react with the aluminum and the stainless steel and turn your product green, okay? Which is not really an appetizing green, it's kind of a gray green. It looks kind of like the outside of an egg yolk that's been overcooked as a hard-boiled egg. Easter coming up, we're probably going to see a bunch of those. Okay, now, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for this to start to thicken, okay? And that's when we say it catches, right? That emulsification is starting to happen, right? So you can see here, right? I've got that light color, that color's getting lighter. And as I whisk, even though it's liquid, I'm still getting those nice trails, okay? Now, the more fat I get emulsified, the faster I can add this. I can't add it too fast though. And I never want to put any more oil in here at a time than what I've got volume to start with. So if I start adding this really fast, I don't want to get too fast because then it will break, okay? Now if I break it, I can save it sometimes, it kind of depends. Generally I'll whisk 2 more egg yolks together, a little bit of mustard, and then use the broken mayonnaise as my fat to make more mayonnaise, right? It just takes a little more egg yolk. And it'll be a little bit eggier mayonnaise than a regular one. Now if I start to puddle, I'm gonna do this on purpose here. If I start to puddle, I put my oil in too fast, right? You can see where I've got puddles of oil, right? Stop, make sure you get that incorporated, right? Whisk it all together, and you can see this is starting to get thick. okay, I'm actually getting a sauce. Okay, that's my catch. There, see? Getting trails, nice little trails. See that? Okay, kind of like your nappe, right? Now I can start adding this just a little bit faster, right? You always want to try and pour your oil over your whisk. That just immediately starts that breaking up of the oil into tiny droplets, okay? Now you can see how this is thickening, right? Again, if you notice a puddle, right, go ahead and get that whisked in, okay? Otherwise, it's just gonna sit there and kind of make a mess and then break, okay? See how thick that's getting? And we've got not even half the oil in there already, okay? So we're gonna get a really good heavy mayonnaise out of this. And by heavy, I mean really thick, okay? But I can start adding this quite a bit faster now.
Does it cause a problem if you add it too slowly?
Pardon?
Does it cause a problem if you add it too slowly?
If you add it too slowly through the entire process, you're probably gonna get green mayonnaise.
Okay.
Great for St. Patrick's Day.
Pardon?
It's great for St. Patrick's Day.
Mhm. Now, see how thick this is getting? Okay, I'm gonna need to thin that out a little bit, right? So there's where adding some of this vinegar comes in. Okay, so I'm gonna whisk that vinegar in. And you're also gonna notice it's gonna lighten in color. Now you can do this in a KitchenAid, but you really need to know how the emulsification works. You need to be able to feel it, right? And see it happen. And by hand is the only way to do that, okay? You can see now I'm adding it pretty quick, right? Ooh, we're getting peaks. Now, when it gets to be this stiff, you're probably going to need to use most of your arm instead of just your wrist. And a big bowl doesn't work. Okay, if you got a big bowl with a big flat bottom, you're not going to be able to keep everything in suspension all at the same time. So it's not going to work very well for you. All right, so try and make sure that you've got a bowl small enough. If we need to find some more, I'll see if I can go hunt some down. So everybody's got the right size bowl. Now we're down to about 7/8 of our product, 7/8 of our oil, right? Got a quarter of a cup left. I'm gonna add the rest of this vinegar. Whisk that in. We're gonna add, I'm gonna start with 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. Right, because it depends on the lemon as to whether you need the whole entire tablespoon or not. should be able to get nice peaks. Yeah. Good. Okay. And then we season salt and pepper. Somebody hand me a few spoons or whatever, please. This is what drives up the triglycerides. Everybody can taste it. Right. If you like a little more lemon in your mayonnaise, you can always add a little more. If you like it to be a little saltier, you can always add a little more. Okay? But that's a good base mayonnaise.
How long would this take in the fridge?
You only want to keep it about 4 days. And it needs to stay with it. Just the safety from salmonella standpoint.
Yeah. Give it to me.
Cool. I'm going. Okay. Now, we're going to make hollandaise real quick. Right? If you want to make hollandaise first, I don't care. If you want to make hollandaise second, I don't care either. But I think you're going to find that trying to get all of us at the stove making hollandaise at the same time is probably going to be detrimental to efficiency. So, and when I learned how to make hollandaise, let me grab some eggs. When I learned how to make hollandaise, I learned how to make it over an open flame instead of a double boiler. But a double boiler is what we use for kindling. And I need a couple of eggs. Now, as long as we don't have any yolks in the egg whites, right? We can save the egg whites today because we're going to make consomme in a week or so, maybe 2 weeks. Then we need the egg whites to make consomme. So we can actually put these in the freezer, thaw them out, we can use them in our consomme, okay? As opposed to throwing them away. You'll find that I generally always save egg whites as much as I can because you can always use them. Okay. Now again, we just want the yolks. Okay. So crack it open. Here. I think this recipe has 3 egg yolks, I believe, on the paper. I learned how to make egg hollandaise by ratios. So in the style that I learned how to make it. For every egg yolk, I used a half teaspoon of white wine and a quarter teaspoon of white vinegar. That was my acid to start with. And then 2 ounces of clarified butter for every egg yolk. So, and that translated pretty easily. I can make a 30 egg hollandaise pretty easily just by translating those ratios, right? So, and then at one point in time, I had a line cook and myself. We had the corporate chef was in from Detroit, and he wasn't really a happy individual then because he was there to fire the guy that came over on the boat because he immigrated from Austria, and one of his best friends immigrated too. He was the regional chef, or corporate chef, and the chef that we had was just a regular club chef. Ed made, I don't know, I guess it was a 30 egg hollandaise or something like that for Saturday night service. He stuck it in the window and Chef Winslow was on the other side. And Winslow looked at him and says, "Is that a good hollandaise?" And he goes, "That's the best hollandaise I've ever made." And so Chef Winslow stuck his finger in it, which we did that back then, right? He stuck his finger in it. Went, "Yep, that's not too bad. But don't be so proud of it." And we're both like standing there going, "Huh? What the?" He goes, "When you can make a 1 egg hollandaise that's that good, then you can be proud of it." So that became a challenge. Ed and I were kind of in a contest to see who could do it first, right? Make a 1 egg hollandaise. And the secret was consistent high heat that you could remove the bowl from. So the heat that I used was the deep fryer. I held the bowl in the deep fryer fat, whisking, pull it off, whisking, pull it off, whisking, pull it off, because you didn't have that direct heat from here, right? Finally made one. So again, what we're doing is we're breaking this up, okay? Now, I like to put just a little bit of water in this because it helps my yolks, okay, to not overcook. So what I'm gonna do, and if anybody cooks on this side today, don't use this for your hollandaise, okay? We're gonna have to clean that up some before we use it, right? But I am gonna put just a couple of drops of hot water into here. I can't whisk it like that.
That's basically like a pre-tipper.
It helps, yeah, it helps your yolks thicken up the way they're supposed to, okay? As opposed to turning into scrambled eggs, right? So now you can see what I've got is I got this water simmering. I'm gonna move this over to the corner here. It's probably gonna be a little easier for y'all to see, okay? Turn that off if you're done. I have a couple of white boys. Now I've got simmering water, I've got steam coming up, okay? I'm gonna turn this down really, 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 really low, okay? Because I don't need that water to be boiling. That's too hot, okay? That steam's gonna be too hot because I'm gonna trap that steam in there, okay? And you're gonna need your side towels for this. I don't carry a side towel, so I use a couple of wipe-aways. Be careful, they will catch on fire, okay? So if they catch on fire, just drop them on the floor. Stomp them, okay? We'll get rid of it. Okay. Now we're gonna put this over here and we're gonna whisk, okay? We wanna keep all of this moving. We wanna keep this scraped down off the sides. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with scrambled egg yolks, which is not really appetizing, okay? And again, we're just keeping this all moving, right? I wanna make sure to scrape this side down because where it's really thin, it's gonna overcook, right? The idea is to get this particular product a light lemony color and the thickness of the final sauce. So it should be a light lemony color. It should be about triple in volume from what we started with, and it should be about the thickness of our finished sauce, okay? Now, if it looks like it's getting too hot on you, right, and this is starting to solidify on the edge, pull it off, okay? Keep it moving, okay? Scrape those sides down, right? And put it back on, okay? Now, this is much more forgiving than the way I've learned, because I learned how to do it over an open flame, and we never made a 2-egg or a 3-egg hollandaise unless we were late at night and we didn't need to make 6 or 7 or 8 egg yolks to make hollandaise because we were getting close to closing service, right? But we had a dish that we needed the hollandaise for, so we'd make a couple of 3 egg at a time, and it's much more forgiving when you've got a larger volume over an open flame than this small amount over an open flame, okay? So you see this is starting to get light lemony colored, okay? It's not quite triple in volume yet, and it's not beginning to thicken quite as enough, okay? So we need to let it heat a little more. Scrape down off the sides, because now it's starting to get hot enough that it wants to coagulate. Okay. If you get some that's beginning to scramble dry on the side of your bowl, don't scrape it in. Okay, just leave it hang out up there. Just kind of stay away from it, because that'll make your sauce make little tiny bits of grit in your sauce. Okay, you don't want that. All right. And some chefs put lemon juice in it right up front. I don't, because with me, the lemon juice, once you put it in there, you can't take it out. So if you put too much lemon in there to start with, your hollandaise isn't going to taste right. Okay. So now, there we go. See how thick that's getting, right? That light lemony color, about 3 times the volume. Okay. There we go. And we'll pull that off. We're going to keep stirring, right? Because that needs to cool just a little bit. That bowl's got to cool some. Okay, so it doesn't get rock hard on us. Okay. And can somebody grab those wet wipeaways over there that I use for balance my bowl? There we go, thank you. Okay. And then we're going to add our butter, right? We're going to add our butter the same way that we added our salad oil. Now, I like my butter to be fairly hot. It should not be hot enough that it's going to cook the eggs. Okay, so but we'll go with this one. Okay, little drops. Again, little drops. Now this is a 2-ounce ladle. We need 1 cup of oil. So how many ladles do we need? Yes, 4. Okay. Again, I'm going to try to pour that right over our whisk. Now if this gets to thicken to the point where it looks like mayonnaise, we need to thin it. Okay. So we're going to thin it with a little bit of hot water. Hot water will thin it. Oil will thicken it. When we found out that salmonella was actually inside an egg, the health department banned us making hollandaise. My board president at the time said, I want hollandaise on my food and you're going to have to make it. I'm like, the health department said we couldn't. I don't care. You're going to make it. That's what I paid to be here. You're going to make hollandaise because I like hollandaise and I want it. Okay. So we made it. Then I had the health department come in a couple of weeks later. Had a bowl of hollandaise sitting on the pass over the stove, staying warm. she was going to find me 20 points for having hollandaise. So I'm going to see how thick that is, all right? I'm going to add a little bit of hot water to thin that out, okay? Because how many ounces of fat have I got in there? 2, all right? Just a little tiny bit more.
So that's about the consistency you want after adding all your fat.
It's going to be a little thicker than this, but it's going to be a lot foamier also. You don't want it the consistency of mayonnaise because it needs to be a sauce. It needs to flow. Now, if I break my hollandaise, I can do the same thing with mayonnaise. I can start with fresh egg yolks, right? Whisk them over the double boiler, get them triple in volume, and then use my broken hollandaise as my oil to go into my egg yolks. Okay. Now, the hollandaise has gotten cold, sitting out, gotten cold, solidified. I've never been able to bring back successfully. There's a couple of chefs that I've talked to over the years that said, yeah, you can do that by putting it over a really low double boiler and whisking it, right? Or trying to whisk it to incorporate that fat, get it broken back out, and then incorporate it again. But I've never been successful. Hollandaise is only good for 4 hours. So if my dinner service starts at 5 o'clock, and I've got hollandaise made to get me through my dinner service, at 9 o'clock, I need to throw it away and make another batch for the rest of the service if I'm open until 10 or 11, okay? So you try and not make so much that you're gonna have to throw it away. Try and hit that so that you run out right before the end of service, and maybe you can make 1 or 2 egg hollandaise if you need it. It doesn't take very long, really. You're doing this over an open flame. I can make hollandaise in about 3 or 4 minutes, usually. Not when I'm talking and trying to do other stuff at the same time. Right? So, how many is that, 3?
It's 3.
Yep. See how we're coming back to that nice sauce consistency? Okay. Now remember, we have to get our lemon juice in here too, okay? So we don't want to get too thin by adding too much water. This should be 4. Is that right? Make sure I don't lose count. You're trying to come away from me, dude. Now there's also what I call egotistical European style of figuring out whether you've got the perfectly made hollandaise or not. And that's to put it on a football dish, which is kind of like a vegetable dish, or a plate, stick it under a hot salamander, and if it browns without breaking, it's a good hollandaise. If the fat starts to break out of it, you get little puddles of butter coming out of it, it's not a good hollandaise. If it burns before it starts to release its oil, it's not a good hollandaise. Now you can see that's pretty thick, right? Add our lemon juice. Again, I'm going to start with about half the lemon that I think I need, right? Some chefs use cayenne pepper in their hollandaise. I peppercorns faster. I think it gives me a much better background flavor than cayenne pepper. But classically, cayenne pepper is what they use. So. Not too much though. If your hollandaise turns orange, you get too much Tabasco. This is one of my favorite sauces. Happy mouth. Yep.
Say we're tasting.
Yep. Grab you a taste. Didn't mean to stomp on your foot.
It's a big food because it don't have a lot.
Yeah, almost 8.
I did it at 12, so it's like a coon.
Big feet, big hands, big ears. I trip over my ears running down the hallway.
I don't know if I like that.
Wait till you put it on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You ready to rock and roll?
Yep.